what I really want to sort of discuss is the idea of status, or the concept of status being an important part of Asian culture, right? So it's funny because I did notice when I first started traveling in Asia, like, what is it now, 7 or 8 years ago, I was aware of the respect that is, or quickly Westerners, I think, when they come to Asia, whether it's India, China, Southeast Asia, it doesn't matter. We sort of famously know that people respect each other a lot more in Asian culture. So
Yes.
it's a positive thing, right? So like, and I noticed that immediately, that for older people, for people in positions of authority or respect, or, you know, it could be monks in Thailand, or could be, you know, it could be religious leaders in Indonesia. So whatever the perception is of someone, whether it's age or not, a lot of respect is shown, and it reflects in the language, it reflects in the behavior, it just reflects in daily life, right? So for Westerners, and of course we have respect too. It's not like Westerners are disrespectful, but I think it's pretty well known that Asian cultures have a lot of respect built into the culture. So I've known that almost from day one, and I've respected it and enjoyed it. Actually, it's something that I noticed for a long time. That was, wow, this is really polite and really nice, and people are really nice to each other, and they treat older people with respect and stuff like that. Now we do in the West, but it's less kind of expected. It's less just part of the social norm in the West. We are encouraged to do that, and if we're raised well, yes, we're encouraged to be respectful to people, but yeah, it's not built into the culture. So I've noticed it for a long time, and I've adapted to it, and I've grown to see it in different ways. But one thing that I've noticed in recent times, since living here in Timor for the last year and a bit, is and it's something that's really dawned on me, like, wow, this is something a lot more layers than I realized, you know.
Yes.
There's layers to it. So what I've come to realize is that the dark side of the respect that you see quickly, like on the surface, there's a dark side to it that, well, it's my perception that it's a dark side. That's not a fact. That's just an opinion, right? Is this, and we use the word status, you know, status of people, whether it's based on age, authority, education, wealth, job, position, and you know, your employment status. Families, you know, some families have more status than others, and it's just something that I've suddenly started to realize there's a dark side to it, and that people take advantage of it if they're in a higher status. They are victimized sometimes if they're in a lower status. And the biggest thing that troubles me is this thing that I think I've noticed, and I think it's true, is that by and large everyone accepts it. That's the part that really troubles me the most. Not the actual behavior, but that it's accepted. It's accepted that some people have higher status and some people have lower status. And it's sort of accepted by everybody wherever they are on the status ladder, right? Whether you're very low and you're sort of considered low status, you seem to accept it equally as the people right at the top, and everyone in between accepts it too. So that part, it sort of troubles me, to be honest, at times, like, because I think it can be taken advantage of, it can be abused, and people, yeah, it's a strange thing. So anyway, I think I've explained what I mean. So I'm curious to hear, especially from someone who's born and raised in Asian culture, like, what do you think about that, and what have you grown up with to think is normal, and what do you think of it now? And you know, now that we've talked about it several times,
Yes.
and so try to take yourself back to like your younger self growing up, and what do you think about status? Like, what is it? Is it a serious thing? I mean,
Yeah, yes, you're right. As I experience, as I see, as I feel, because I'm Indonesian, so status is very important in Indonesia, or maybe in other Asian countries, or maybe here too. Well, that's for sure. Maybe,
I think so.
don't know. Yeah, I think so. But in Indonesia, status is so important, and as you said, not only in the working field, in the community, in like in the small, any community, in the family, in the working in institution, company, school.
Yeah.
Always there is many levels. There is status. So the dark side is it creates fear.
Right.
We have to not only respect, but we have to be afraid. We have to feel afraid of the
higher
to the
status
boss,
people,
to the,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
To the
superior position people.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, you're right.
Okay. Like, I'm just, I mean, don't get me wrong, because in the West, I don't want people to think that I'm saying that we don't have this in the West at all. This is an Asian thing. No, I'm not suggesting that. I think in every society there are people with authority and higher so-called status. People, with wealthy people who are superior in companies and positions. So we actually have all of this thing. But what's the key difference that I experience or I observe is that in the West we sort of accept that it's a necessary, somewhat natural part of life, but it's not given value by everybody generally, and it's not accepted that people who are wealthier or higher educated or whatever, it's not acceptable that they treat others different. And people who are supposed
professionally,
personally in the community, it's not expected that they will treat you poorly and that will accept it.
Oh yes,
and people who are of a so-called lower status don't have to fear people of a so-called higher status. So don't get me wrong, we have wealthy, we have poor, we have people who are respected widely, and we have people who are not. So we have the same positions in society. It's not so different. But the difference that I've realized recently is, but we don't accept that as the right to treat people poorly below you, or that you have to fear the people above you. You know what I mean? So that's what I think is the dark side that I see in
the behavior also.
The behavior but like I think you said something important to the context is it's important in our country, it's important in the family and in the community. Now that assumes that our parents instilling it in children, our parents promoting it, our families and communities sort of telling their kids and young people that it's an important thing. Of course they don't say status, probably they don't use the word to describe it, but how is it that Asian people grow to accept this idea that people above you should be feared and respected, and people below you can be treated like whatever? How does it happen?
Some parents, well, it's strange actually, but some parents, they teach their kids to get the status. When you're growing up, please be educated and get the status, because if you have a status in the community, so people will respect you.
Do they actually say this sort of thing?
Yes.
Openly. It's not just implied.
Kids. No, to the kids.
Right. Okay. So it's very it's obvious. It's quite direct.
People may probably many Indonesian or people that they may agree or disagree with me, but that's the reality. For many years I haven't realized this. But since I'm living here, I know many friends. I know you. Many friends from other countries, from other culture, and then I realized, our culture is different, especially Indonesian. We really care about status in everywhere.
Yeah.
Especially now, I'm working in international school. It's so much different. The behavior between the staff, among the teachers, the level in the people inside the school is very different, because in Indonesia I work at school, I work in a company, and status is very obvious.
So there's quite strong guidelines about how people behave.
Yeah, like people on the top level, they don't like mingling, they don't like socializing with the people, the workers in the low level. Maybe they're too pride. Well, I admit that there are some people that don't do that. They like doing that. They like mixing with anyone. But in reality, we know that we can see that yeah, it's still happening.
Right.
Actually, and it's not only about the position in one institution, school, or company, but also who becomes senior, who is working or staying longer than that person, that the newcomer.
Oh, okay.
So you need
So
to
it's about
respect me. You need to
length of service. I've been here longer,
Yes,
therefore
yeah,
I'm
I know
above
better
you.
than you.
Right.
So what do you know? So
Yeah.
you need to. You
Well,
need to think.
I should admit that this thing can happen anywhere too. This idea that I know more than you because I've been around longer than you in this institution or this community or whatever. That we experience that too. Like I say, don't see this as black and white, like East and Western is completely. But I will say that, and I remember you were quite surprised, like in the last couple of years, when I'd say, "Oh yeah, I went and saw the principal, and I asked them blah blah blah."
Yeah,
I didn't make an
shocking.
appointment.
It's shocking to me.
I didn't make a formal request to see that person and make an appointment to have a meeting. I just, "Hey John, how's it going? Can I do this? Blah blah blah. Yeah, okay, whatever." And we just chat like equals.
Yes.
And that's, to me, that's completely normal and a part of. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still respect his position, but we're still colleagues in the sense that we don't see each other in a daily way of higher and lower and all of this. We accept that one has more authority and responsibility and gets paid more. That's the same, but it doesn't make us different. It doesn't. And so we use first name basis, and that's probably a cultural thing as well. We don't have certain forms of greeting that we must use. I mean, this is also the modern generation that we're talking about. So it could well have been different in different generations, even in the West. But in this day and age, it's in my experience, it's pretty common that I can address all of my colleagues by name, old or young, and and so our status is not a daily thing that we feel. It's not something that you're very aware of actually most of the time. But yeah, like now, for those listening or watching, like the examples I see of status that I think hang on is. For example, here in Dili, we go to, and this, you've got many similar stories in Indonesia, so I think this is pretty common, and I've experienced it in Thailand actually as well. You go to an office, a government department, and you get treated like you're you're rubbish. Like the people there can just treat you like anything. They love to parade around in uniforms with badges, and I'm thinking, hang on, you're a civil servant,
Yes.
and to me the key word is servant, by the way.
Yes.
You should treat like in any organization the customers. Have some customer service, like, So why are you acting like you're a big deal? And more shocking than that is that everyone accepts it. Everyone accepts that that's normal. And I just sort of, and I mean, you got to pick your battles, which means. You're not always going to fight everyone about everything all the time. Not every argument is worth having. Sometimes you just have to realize this is the way it is. You don't. But the big picture is that, this is the way it is everywhere I look. Also happens with people who are supposedly lower. Like they treat people that are higher like they're really special and sort of.
They're trying to impress.
Right.
Yeah, the bad impact. For the people on the low level, they're trying to impress these people in any ways.
Okay.
So it's like a competition, unhealthy competition.
Okay.
I can get closer. I can get close to that person, to my boss, to my principal, so to my manager.
Yeah.
So
right.
it's gonna be a point plus.
Yeah. Well, my dad makes a funny comment about this behavior in Thailand because he's seen it a million times there too. And it can be connected to the concept of corruption and authority and all sorts of different things. But I was talking about it with my dad once. I can't remember exactly the conversation, but it was something to do with this about, why aren't the people complaining? Why aren't the people protesting about this? Whatever it was. And he goes, no, the people below just wish it was them. They just wish they had that advantage. Yeah. They're not worried. They're not thinking the guy's doing anything wrong. They just think, lucky him and unlucky me. So again, that's a sign of accepting this whole, this very structured. They just wish it was them, instead of protesting and saying, hang on, this is not fair, I'm being treated poorly, or I'm being ripped off, or this is corrupt, there's less and less likely that they're going to
tolerate. Like,
they tolerate it.
Yeah, these people have right. Deserve. Have right.
I just wish it was me. That's their only complaint. I wish it was me and not him. And I just think, wow. So I'm really, you know, of course, I don't want to say that this happens everywhere in Asia. We're using the term Asian just with some experiences. You're Indonesian, and I've traveled here and there. We're here in Timor. But I've seen it. I have seen it in different levels everywhere. And it's just interesting how it's kind of like this obsession with climbing up the status, right? Like everybody wants to climb up the ladder. And it's ironic that when you're at the bottom, you accept everyone above you and you sort of like obedient. And the ones up above you are being assholes, and then you get there, and then you're an asshole to the ones below you, and it just continues. It's just like, but it seems to be they treat it like it's a God-given right to be that way. You know, the people at the bottom accept it. The people at the top, of course, benefit from it. Like they're the ones at the top, and I think it just goes all the way up. Like it goes right up to, you know, top politicians and top business people who are right at the top, and. Yeah, just this concept of status. I've never heard the word status so much in my life than living in Asia. I mean, it's just from our conversations, obviously a lot. That's the most obvious one. But just the concept of, okay, people have these positions and they're all trying to get higher on the ladder. And I just think, you know, how do people feel about it really? I mean, I know, like you said, what did you say? You never thought about it most of your life, right?
Yeah, I feel like it's normal. It's happening in my culture and with my friend, among my environment. It's very normal. And then when I live outside, live overseas, and know another culture, and then whoa, it's not normal. Well, it's normal only. It's normal in those cultures for me and for us, but for other people, no, not actually. And if there is a Indonesian, especially Indonesian, if they disagree with me, oh no, we so there's no status in with my boss or with anyone. I'd like to ask her or him, what do you feel if you want to greet your boss, for example? What do you exactly feel? Or you just feeling like you're greeting your friend? That's perfect. That's great. Yeah. But if you are you feeling, oh, I want to greet her so I can make him happy, or I'm impress him, or if you are still feeling nervous, so that's status actually. Right. And you feel like it's an act of loyalty and an act of. Be honest. What do you feel? Yeah, and of course there'll be variation. Can you invite your boss? Can you invite your principal to your house? Yeah. Well, you've even said that someone without any hesitation or nervous hidden agenda. Yeah, right. And then you've even said that socially too, like people of a higher status don't usually normally mix socially with people of a lower status. It's the opposite, you know, people are clearly in their status levels. Yes. Now, again, I just can't stress enough that we have these types of things permeate all societies. So, you know, it's not completely absent in the West. But I've got certainly enough personal experience and knowledge to know that, you know, we can go out with our boss, you know, after work or whatever, and that when work's finished. We go out, we socialize. Yeah, awesome. You know, we're not sitting around in a bar or a restaurant or a cafe wondering what the boss is going to say so I can agree and smile and laugh or whatever. I mean, you know, like that's over. You can even mock your boss, you know, socially in a nice way. I mean, you know, you can have fun with them and make fun of them because you're in social time. Of course, people shouldn't go too far, but that's just with anyone. That could not just your boss. You should always be, you know, don't be an idiot. You know, like everybody's aware of that, but. Yeah, so I just realized that in status-based societies, actually, we should. I keep using the word culture, like there's a status culture. Status is part of the culture, but I'm curious if it's actually in the culture or more part of the society, and it's based on like one thing about Asian countries, most of them, nearly all of them,
Timor-Leste is actually an exception, but high populations, high competition, limited opportunities with a lot of people competing for jobs and whatever opportunity to improve their lives, right? So I wonder if things like that encourage this type of behavior. Like it it organizes everybody. Like we've got millions of people,
Yes.
and we need to like have some sort of system. And not deliberately. It's not like somebody planned it. I don't mean it. Just sort of happened like that, mixed with maybe the old cultural habits of respecting older people, and
Or like it's from Suharto era, from the Dutch era with the many
Yeah,
level
well, that's a uniquely hierarchy. Yeah, we've talked a lot about the Suharto era and what effects it's had, perhaps had on Indonesian society till this day, not just obviously before 1998. And just that sort of almost military attitude. Like in all armies have ranks and soldier and captain and sergeant. I don't know the actual names, but they have ranks. And in any military-based society, especially, you could well get a crossover. Like you're getting military-type attitudes. Contaminating, for lack of a better word, contaminating like the people's thinking, because they've been taught like that, And we've talked about that too. How perhaps in Indonesia, in particular, the military dictatorship that the older generation of now were mostly living through that. That was their generation,
yes.
Or their timeline. So it's like, status. It gets frustrating, like I can speak from a Westerner's perspective, where we are sort of, some people might roll their eyes and think, that's just a theory, and it may just be a theory, but it's still the theory that we know is of equality, trying to achieve equality, at least in treatment. Everyone has equal rights. People have different roles and responsibilities in work, and people have different levels of education and wealth. Yes, that does separate people's daily life, but equality is kind of like expected across the board. Like whether you're rich or poor, you're considered equal.
Everyone has a different role.
Everyone has a different role and responsibility. We accept that,
yes.
But that doesn't make people unequal. Now that's a nice theory, and that's not the experience of all Westerners and every day, everywhere. We have discrimination. Things go wrong.
Yes.
We have bad people. We have unfair treatment. It happens, but I believe the general acceptance across the society in the Western world is that everyone's equal, and then that's the foundation perspective. What people decide to personally do in their behavior and their personal view can be different, but whereas I suspect that in Asian culture there's an acceptance that there are different levels. And
we're not equal if we have a different level, different status,
right,
different position. We're not equal, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Like in one company, that person is cleaner or manager or only a worker. They're different.
Right.
So I can't lie that many times I saw. Well, I saw that one day I work in a company.
Yeah.
Non-government company, and I believe that this happens also in some government companies. I've been told, well, I had a quite good position at that day, and I've been told by my manager not to mingle, not to socialize with the cleaners, or you can, it's embarrassing for some positions, some people in a good position in a management, top management, if you have a lot of interaction with the cleaners. Yeah, and even my uncles also, they told me that they suggest me, they gave me advice not to do that. So not only inside the office, but outside also, if they know you that you like hanging out with those workers, with those cleaners, so your boss,
you're mixing things uncomfortably for them.
Inside and outside, you have to keep your image
right.
Once
well, image is a status
status
connected.
and image, yes.
Yeah, and it's funny because you've just made me remember that, because we've been talking predominantly about economic jobs and wealth status, but the status, again, culture, I should use another word, the status habit or status perspective also crosses into other things, right? It's not just about jobs and money. Those are two.
Yes.
Education, jobs and money is one, two or three big parts of status, but it goes into color of skin, it goes into all sorts of things, you know what I mean? Like, and I mean, this is an ugly part of it too, and this happens in other countries. It can happen in the Western countries too, but I think Asian culture is like quite open about it. White is better. I mean, nobody says this. Nobody says white's better. You know, they don't go around making it obvious, but many things suggest that that's what people feel. That lighter skin is more desirable, not just for beauty. I mean, that's obvious, you know, especially for women. There's standards of beauty and lots of advertising and media which promotes standards of beauty for women and men. But the idea that it won't only just make you more attractive, that's also another way to raise your status.
Yes.
You know, or by just, you know, and you've used, and this is, sorry to say this, you know, publicly, but the idea that, you know, mixed children that are lighter skin is like a positive thing to aim to be proud of.
They openly,
you know, fix the kids.
about
What is it? Fix the kids.
Yeah, in Indonesia we
Oh my
say
God.
memperbaiki keturunan means fix your children.
Yeah.
The color of skin of your children.
I mean, that's just appalling. That's
You're mocking
appalling.
your own race. You underestimate your.
Yeah.
You're mocking your own people.
You know what
actually.
the bitter irony is that you're showing a sense of shame or dissatisfaction with yourself and your people, but what's weird is that you've got this hierarchy of status for jobs, education, position in the community, blah blah blah, all on this side, and then when it comes to color, then white is above all of that too. So we want to achieve that status too, if possible. And it's just, I mean, in 2022, it feels very 1922 or 1822. It doesn't feel like it has a place in this world, you know? Like color. I mean, it's almost embarrassing. Not embarrassing like I'm embarrassed of the people. I just mean it's embarrassing that perspective can still survive, you know? Like, really? Color?
Yeah, exactly. Like the obvious ones happens to Indonesian people. Like, as we know, many Indonesian women get married with bule or foreigners to live their status.
Right.
They don't hide the reason.
Right.
Well, of course, love is maybe the reason. Not maybe.
Hopefully, maybe, but it's not that important.
But some cases, they want to lift their status, and they want to continue it to her children. So not only stop from her, stop on her, but they don't want. She doesn't want that her kids. What is it? Feel what she feels.
Sure.
Yeah. So
well, you know what?
And the children.
Yeah. So everyone benefits from a racial or cultural status lift. You know.
And then they changed her behavior also.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we know
what,
that.
the woman?
The women, for sure.
And
because
what do you mean?
Suddenly she has status, and then suddenly she sees herself better than the local, her friends.
Oh wow!
Because she got married with a foreigner.
That's
sad actually.
Sad, yeah. But to be fair, I'm trying to be objective because, you know, our intention, of course, to talk about this publicly is not. We're not attack. It's not to attack.
No.
But it is. It's just to highlight
also.
A reality, you know, and explore it, because neither of us can claim to like have to know the truth about everything. It's just my observation mixed with what I know, with what I've heard about, and what I've seen.
We are talking about status in many fields, in many.
Yeah. I think what I'm thinking just now is that, because we talk about developing country, third world countries, sort of developing countries a bit further along, and then developed countries are basically modern countries. So it's not just modern in the sense of education, technology, and economic. There's there's a sort of a general view that the thinking has become more liberal and more open-minded in the modern world as well. So I wonder if when I say you guys, I mean people from developing countries are just on the same timeline but just behind, because in New Zealand, for example, back in the 1940s, 50s and 60s, like in my mum's generation when she was born, there was it wasn't quite so open and direct as it is in Asia, but there was certainly intermarriage going on that probably had elements of status raising going on in New Zealand between Māori and Pākehā at that time. It wasn't so multicultural as it is now back then. So how deliberate it was in that, I don't know, and I don't know how much it was talked about or acknowledged publicly. Probably not very talked about too much, but I think we had something similar in that time where predominantly Māori women would marry Pākehā men. Usually, there was the other way around happened too, but less. And that in some ways raised not just the status of that Māori woman. In fact, not really the status, but certainly the economic advantage came, because Pākehā men in that day and time, till now in some statistically, had advantages in careers and earning capacity. So a Māori woman who married into a Pākehā marriage with a Pākehā man, probably had a better opportunity for economically better life. So there was status, and that was 50, 60 years ago. So I'm just wondering to myself if this happening in Asian cultures now is just the same thing, but just happening now instead of 50 or 60 years ago. I mean, Indonesia has an interesting history, of course, with the Dutch colonial days, and I don't know enough stories of intermarriage in the Dutch colonial era that probably had advantages and disadvantages. I don't know, but in New Zealand in that time, it was a thing. But anyway, where does that leave us? I mean, it's not like we can change. You can't. It's very difficult to change people's thinking. And it's not even my intention to change anyone's mind. But how do you? This is a dilemma for someone that's not from the status sort of accepting culture. So for me, it's like when I see it or when I experience it, it makes me angry or it makes me annoyed. It can make me frustrated. What do you think we should do, thinking about status, and like how do you deal with it in daily life? Like, what's the trick, or how do you deal with it? Because I've found myself seeing it and just going, I have to get out of here. I can't deal with this. Like, I don't. It can make you angry sometimes.
Yes, personally, it changed my perspective about status actually. So one day when I go back to Indonesia, when I go home, I believe I'm gonna be a different person of seeing this topic.
Right.
Like if I'm working again, I'm talking about a job. If I will work somewhere, I will see my boss differently now. Yeah. Not like before. So maybe there's no fear. Like I respect, of course, but genuinely respect, not afraid or. Yeah. But I can't. Of course, I can't change what's still happening.
I guess we have to accept it. We have to accept it to a certain extent, because accept that we can't change other people's views.
To understand could be the reason why.
But I think another thing too is that we what we can control. The only thing anyone can control is themselves, right? Yes. So that's I guess that's the default position, is like, okay, the people around me might think status is important, but I'm not going to be drawn into that.
Yes.
I'm not going to start accepting that either. I mean, let's be honest. We are we are both foreigners in this country, and I'm a Western foreigner, which affords me, by default, quite high status amongst local people, right? So he's a foreigner. It doesn't mean they like me or care about me. I just mean that he's a foreigner, Malay, and that gives him, but I don't. All I can do is not care about that and just get on with people, meet people, treat everybody the same, normal values, and just not use my status in a way that I start to actually believe it. Like, if people start treating you like you're something higher or better, the worst thing you can do is start to act like that.
Yes.
Like, you know, because that means you're starting to believe the bullshit. You're starting to believe it, and then starting to use it to your advantage. And before, if you stayed for years in that situation, you'll start using it to your advantage just like it's normal. And basically you've completely joined it. You know, equally, I'm not going to accept someone who thinks they're above me treating me poorly. I don't care who you think you are. You know, and then of course that can make you unpopular in a society where status is important. If somebody thinks they can treat me or you or someone, my friends, a certain way, and I don't like it, I'll say something. I don't care who you think you are. You know, and of course that can create trouble. But
that's something that I'm gonna do. As I said, that I can't change someone else because maybe for other people it's normal. Like I felt that before now. They haven't realized that because it's normal for them. So I start from myself. For example, and if I got a bad service from a civil servant in the office, I believe that I won't be silent right now because that's a part of status, and it doesn't make sense. They should do more than. But you know, sometimes the service is so bad, even though that's their job. But they just pretend using their power, using their status to treat the customer, to treat the civil so bad. So one day when I see that again, I believe that I need to speak up. Because I have right to do that. Or well, what else that I can do actually?
It's just like you say, if we are perceived that we're being treated poorly, then we speak up for ourselves and stand up for ourselves. And equally, if people are like people who are so-called below us, then we just treat them completely like equals, you know. Like there's a funny story. Like last year, one of our colleagues, he has the habit, I think it's his cultural habit, of calling everybody sir, like men sir and women miss or ma'am, I guess. It's old-fashioned, and it's quite sweet in a sense that that's his habit, to call everybody with that. And it was another of my colleagues, a different colleague, a Western colleague, said, "Oh, you know, it's what did she say? Oh, it's this person also believes in equality and that everyone should be treated the same." So that she saw him calling everybody sir as a sort of him being lower, acting lower, like we're higher. And I said, it's funny because I knew what she was talking about. I totally understood what she meant, because she felt he shouldn't have to call us sir and ma'am. I don't like it. I don't feel comfortable. He's our colleague, not lower. You know. And I said, oh yeah, I just made us equal. I call him sir also. And then it instantly makes us equal. Like he calls me sir and I call him sir, and then that's how I made us equal. You know. And she sort of like, oh yeah, true. Like that works. You know. I mean, that's only one example though. It's not going to work everywhere in the street. You know. But it's an interesting phenomenon. I don't claim that I know all about it or that it's absolutely true, or you know, it's just our view of it and your experience growing up.
My personal opinion about
mine
what's
too.
happening, and that reminds myself also that one day or maybe now, if I have something better than someone else, so I don't want to be arrogant, or I don't want to use this status. Of course, everyone has something better, something that person doesn't have. You know, and once you are on the higher place, it's easy. It's so tempting for you to act differently, to behave differently. That remind myself that everyone is equal. It doesn't matter what the position, who they are. Actually, who we are.
And you know what? Most cultures, families, even religions teach this.
Oh yes.
Like what we're talking about, the status thing. I think most people would say, if you actually said to them, "Do you think everyone should be treated equally?" Everyone's going to say yes. But is the reality of different societies that's not the reality. You know, status is there. status is a habit and a perspective. But but if you ask everybody, do you think we should all be equal? They're all going to say yes. I'm not. So because of that, I'm not really interested in asking people that question, because that's obviously going to give a positive answer.
Yeah.
But what I think is really telling is how people behave. Your behavior is more important than what you say. So how people treat each other, and again, the reasons for it, I don't really know. We've chatted about the idea of maybe millions of people, cultures with millions of people, societies with a big population. They have to sort themselves out, and this is one way. Status can be one way. It's sort of an ugly way, if you ask me, but it might be something that's happened. Old traditions of respect to people are being used in the modern world as well, because if you went back I don't know, 200, 300, 400 years long before the modern world, before people were employed in jobs and all of this, there was still, like in Javanese culture or Maori culture, there was status in the sense of respect to older people or to your leaders or chiefs, or even in religion. So this is a very old tradition that we all have of respecting certain people. But I think in the modern world it's gone all kind of crazy, because you've got money, you've got jobs, you've got education, you've got this media which creates the obsession with being whiter. It's gone like too many influences.
It's easy to see themselves that I am better than you.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, how can you be sure that you are better than that person?
You can't be, is the truth.
Yeah.
You can't be better.
You just feel that,
but it's also the people below feeling lower. That's a big problem too.
Better and lower.
Yeah. Both of them are wrong. Both of them are wrong. The one who thinks they're better is wrong, and the one who thinks they're lower than that one is also wrong.
Yeah.
You're actually.
And they say, "Oh, it's okay. I accept my
position.
My position, my life.
Well, you're wrong
you can
too.
Treat me anything you want.
Yeah.
That's
part of the problem. So
respect yourself too.
Exactly. It's easy to blame the aggressive one,
yes.
like the one at the top. It's very easy for us to go, oh, you're treating people like shit because you're above them, and that might be true, and that is wrong, but it's equally wrong to accept it.
Yes.
You're part of the problem if you don't stand up against it, or stand up for our friends or our family if they're not in a strong enough feeling to defend themselves. We have to help too. But anyway, we haven't even talked to the camera. I'll say this before we finish. If you have an opinion about it or want to add to the discussion, a comment or something like that, please do. We're not claiming to know it all, as it may seem. Okay,